The alarm buzzed through the empty halls of Nexus Prime's archive section. Vextar lifted his forearms from the scanning device and looked at the readings again. After 3,000 years, the quantum locks were finally breaking down. He had worked as the Galactic Council's chief archivist for over 200 years. In all that time, nobody had ever asked about Vault 847. Most people forgot it even existed. The vault sat in the deepest part of the archive, behind 7 layers of security shields. Even Vextar had never been inside. The old record said the vault contained artifacts from an extinct species. The files were marked as historical interest only and low priority. But now the locks were failing, and council law required him to report it. Vextar sent the alert message and waited. Within hours, representatives from all 12 major civilizations arrived at Nexus Prime. This surprised him. He had expected maybe 1 or 2 junior officials. Instead, the council's most senior members came personally. High Commander Zephlon of the mighty Hegemony Fleet arrived first. His red skin glowed with excitement as he studied the vault door. 3,000 years, he said in his deep voice. What could be so important that our ancestors sealed it away? Dr. Thermac, the council's best xenobiologist, examined the quantum locks with her scanning tools. Her blue tentacles moved quickly over the ancient technology. These seals were not meant to keep things out, she said quietly. They were meant to keep something in. Ambassador Krillnex from the Harmony Collective floated near the vault, his peaceful nature making him seem nervous. Perhaps our ancestors had good reasons for sealing this away. Maybe we should leave it alone. But it was too late. The locks had degraded too much. The vault door began to open on its own. The door slid back with a deep, grinding sound. Stale. Air rushed out, carrying strange smells that none of them recognized. Emergency lights flickered on inside the vault, showing shelves lined with storage containers, data drives, and strange objects. Vextar stepped inside first. His job was to protect the archives even if he was scared. The others followed close behind. The vault was larger than it looked from outside. Shelves reached up to the ceiling, filled with thousands of items. Everything was labeled in the old Galactic script. Most labels said the same thing. Origin, Terra, Sol System, Sector 847. Below that, in smaller text, Species, Human, Status, Extinct. Dr. Thermac picked up a small device from the nearest shelf. It was made of metal and plastic with a dark screen on one side. This appears to be some kind of personal communication device, she said. Very primitive, but the construction is interesting. High Commander Zephlon found a larger object wrapped in some kind of fabric. When he unwrapped it, he found a painting. It showed a blue and green world with white clouds floating around it. At the bottom, written in strange symbols, were the words Earth Home. They called their world Earth, Zephlon said. The galactic database shows Sol System was destroyed by a stellar anomaly 2,147 years ago. The star went supernova and took all the planets with it. Ambassador Krillnex floated over to a shelf filled with small rectangular objects. Each one had colorful pictures and symbols on the front. These might be information storage devices, he suggested. But I cannot read the writing system. Vextar activated the vault's main computer terminal. Ancient systems hummed to life, their displays showing data in the old galactic format. The translation protocols are still active, he said. Give me a moment to convert their language system. While Vextar worked, the others explored the vault. They found clothes made from plant fibers and animal skin. There were tools made from metal, wood, and stone. Strange devices that nobody could identify filled entire shelves. Dr. Thermac discovered a section filled with what looked like children's drawings. Colorful pictures showed small figures standing next to much larger creatures. Some of the creatures had sharp teeth and claws. Others were covered in fur or had long necks. These cannot be accurate, she said. No intelligent species would live alongside such dangerous animals. Translation complete, Vextar announced. The terminal screen now showed text in modern galactic script. I have access to their data files. There are millions of documents, images, and video recordings. High Commander Zephlon walked over to the terminal. Start with something simple. What did they call themselves? Vextar typed commands into the system. They called themselves humans. They lived on the third planet of the Sol system, which they named Earth. Population at last count was approximately 8 billion individuals. 8 billion. Dr. Thermack looked shocked. That is more than most star systems have across multiple worlds. How did they all fit on one planet? Let me find more information, Vextar said. He scrolled through file directories, looking for basic information about human society. Here is something. It appears to be an educational document written by a young human named Jinwoo. The title translates as Why Humans Are Special, a school report. Ambassador Krillnex floated closer. A child's schoolwork? That seems harmless enough. Vexitar opened the file and began reading aloud. Humans are special because we can do things that other animals cannot do. We can run farther than horses. We can swim longer than fish. We can climb higher than monkeys. We can think better than dolphins. The council members looked at each other. These claims seemed impossible. Horses were among the fastest land animals known to galactic science. Fish could live underwater their entire lives. Monkeys were incredible climbers. Dolphins had large brains for their body size. Continue reading, High Commander Zephlon said. Vextar kept going. Humans are also special because we never give up. When other animals get tired, they rest. When humans get tired, we keep going anyway. This is called endurance. My teacher says humans used to hunt big animals by chasing them until the animals could not run anymore. Dr. Thermack's tentacles stopped moving. That describes persistence hunting. Only a few species in the galaxy use that method. It requires incredible endurance and intelligence. There is more, Vextar continued. Humans can eat things that would poison other animals. We drink alcohol, which is poison, but it makes us happy. We eat spicy peppers that burn our mouths, but we like the taste. We drink caffeine, which speeds up our hearts because it helps us stay awake. The silence in the vault grew heavy. What kind of species consumed toxins for pleasure? Ambassador Krillnex spoke first. This must be fiction. No species would evolve to drink poison as entertainment. But Dr. Thermack was studying her scanner readings. The genetic samples I am detecting suggest this is not fiction. The biological markers match the claims in this document. High Commander Zephlon moved to another terminal. We need more information. One child's school report cannot tell us everything about an extinct species. For the next several hours, they explored the files. They found videos of humans running, incredible distances without stopping. Images of humans swimming in vast oceans filled with dangerous creatures. Pictures of humans climbing mountains so high that the air was too thin to breathe. They discovered that humans lived on every part of their planet. Some lived in deserts where the heat would kill most galactic species. Others lived in frozen lands where nothing should be able to survive. Some even lived on floating cities in their oceans. As the day continued, more council members arrived. News of the vault opening had spread through the diplomatic community. Soon, representatives from over 20 species crowded into the archive section. But the more they learned, the more confused they became. According to the files, humans were both incredibly intelligent and surprisingly violent. They created beautiful art and powerful weapons. They wrote poetry about love and detailed manuals about war. Dr. Thermack found a medical file that listed common human injuries. The list included broken bones, deep cuts, burns, poisoning, and disease. But the same file showed that humans regularly recovered from all of these injuries. Their healing capabilities are remarkable, she reported. They seem to bounce back from trauma that would kill most species. As the artificial day cycle ended, the council members gathered around the main terminal. They had barely scratched the surface of the human archives, but already they were disturbed by what they found. We need to study these files carefully, High Commander Zephlon announced. If even half of what we have read is true, then humans were unlike any species we have encountered. Vextar saved their progress and began shutting down the systems. I will prepare a full report for the council, but I must warn you all. There are thousands more files to examine. We have only seen the beginning. As they left the vault, none of them noticed the small blinking light on one of the communication devices. Deep in space, far from Nexus Prime, a salvage ship received an automated signal. The ship's navigation computer logged the transmission and filed it under unknown. Origin, further investigation required. The ship's captain, a man named Hyunwoo, was asleep in his quarters. He would not see the message until morning. By then, the Galactic Council would have discovered much more about his species than they were prepared to handle. Dr. Thermic arrived at the vault early the next morning. She had not slept well. The human files from the previous day had filled her dreams with impossible images. As the Council's senior xenobiologist, she had studied thousands of species across the galaxy. None of them were like these humans. She activated the archive systems and began searching for medical and biological files. If she was going to understand these creatures, she needed to know how their bodies worked. The first file she opened was labeled Basic Human Biology, Medical Training Manual. The author was listed as Dr. Hyjin Park, Human Medical Officer. Terra Colony Ship Generation 7 Dr. Thermac began reading, making notes as she went. Human bodies were built around an internal skeleton made of calcium phosphate. This was not unusual. Many species had internal bones, but human bones were incredibly dense and strong. The file showed X-ray images of humans who had broken their bones, then healed completely within weeks. Impossible, she muttered to herself. Bone regeneration that fast required medical intervention in most species. Humans apparently did it naturally. She kept reading. Human hearts pumped blood through a closed circulatory system. Again, this was not unique. But human hearts were powerful enough to pump blood up to their brains even when they stood upright. Most species needed to be horizontal, or have multiple hearts to manage such pressure. The file described human blood as containing iron-based oxygen carriers. This explained their red color, which appeared in many photographs. But the blood also contained infection-fighting cells that could adapt to new diseases. The immune system could actually learn from illness and become stronger. High Commander Zeflon entered the vault as Dr. Thermac was studying cardiovascular data. "What have you discovered?" he asked. "Their biology is extremely robust," she replied. "Look at this section on physical capabilities." She opened a new file showing human athletic records. The numbers seemed impossible. Humans could run over 40 kilometers per hour in short bursts. They could run over 100 kilometers without stopping. Some could hold their breath underwater for over 20 minutes. "These cannot be accurate," Zeflon said. "My own species are considered among the strongest in the galaxy, and we cannot match these numbers." Dr. Thermac opened another file. This one is worse. It describes human adaptation to extreme environments. The file was written by someone named Taiman Kim, who identified himself as a military survival instructor. His manual taught humans how to survive in conditions that would kill most galactic species within hours. Humans could survive in temperatures that ranged from 50 degrees below freezing to 50 degrees above the boiling point of water. They could live for weeks without food and days without water. They could function at altitudes where the air was too thin for most species to breathe. But the most disturbing part was how they adapted to these extremes. Instead of avoiding dangerous conditions, humans deliberately exposed themselves to harsh environments to become stronger. They called this training. Ambassador Krillnex floated into the vault as Dr. Thermac was reading about temperature adaptation. "I have been reviewing their cultural files," he said nervously. "I think I am beginning to understand why our ancestors sealed this vault." He activated another terminal and brought up a video file. The image showed a human settlement on what appeared to be a frozen world. Snow and ice covered everything. The wind howled so loudly that it could be heard through the recording equipment. But the humans were not hiding inside heated buildings. They were working outdoors, wearing only thin layers of clothing. Some were actually removing their upper garments, exposing their skin to the freezing air. They appeared to be enjoying themselves. "They call this winter sports, Ambassador," Krillnex explained. "They deliberately travel to the coldest parts of their world for entertainment." Dr. Thermac pulled up another file. "Here is something even stranger. This document describes human dietary habits. The nutrition file was written by a human named Woojin Lee, who worked as what they called a chef. His job was to prepare food that humans would enjoy eating. The list of human foods included items that would be toxic to most galactic species. Humans regularly consumed ethanol, which was used as industrial solvent in most civilizations. They ate plants containing capsaicin, a chemical compound designed by evolution to prevent animals from eating the plant. They drank beverages containing caffeine, a natural pesticide. But humans did not just tolerate these toxins. They actively sought them out. They had entire industries devoted to producing alcoholic beverages with different flavors and effects. They competed to see who could eat the spiciest foods. They consumed caffeine every day to improve their mental performance. "This is not possible," Dr. Thermax said. "No species evolves to enjoy poison." High Commander Zeflon found another disturbing file. Look at this medical report. It describes common human injuries and recovery times. The medical file listed injuries that would require months of treatment for most species: broken bones, torn muscles, internal bleeding, severe burns, and organ damage. But humans regularly recovered from these injuries in weeks or even days. The file included case studies of humans who had survived incidents that should have been fatal. One human fell from a height of over 10 kilometers and lived. Another was trapped underwater for 30 minutes and recovered completely. A third survived exposure to radiation levels that would kill most species instantly. "They have a saying," Zeflon read from the cultural notes, "what does not kill you makes you stronger." Dr. Thermax stopped her work and looked at the others. "I think this might actually be true for them. Their bodies seem designed to adapt to trauma and become more resilient." She opened a file about human exercise habits. Instead of avoiding physical stress, humans deliberately put their bodies through punishing routines. They lifted heavy objects repeatedly until their muscles were damaged, then allowed the muscles to heal and grow stronger. They ran until their bodies were exhausted, then ran further the next day. Some humans even practiced fighting each other as entertainment. They had organized sports where individuals would try to physically defeat their opponents. The crowds watching these contests would cheer for more violence. Ambassador Krillnex discovered a file that made him physically ill. "This document describes human medical procedures," he said weakly. The file showed humans deliberately cutting open their own bodies to repair internal problems. They called this surgery. The images showed human medical workers cutting through skin, muscle, and bone to reach diseased organs. But the most disturbing part was that the patients were often awake during these procedures. Humans had developed chemicals that could block pain signals while keeping the patient conscious. They seemed to consider this routine. They cut themselves open to fix problems inside their bodies, Ambassador Krillnex said. And they are awake while it happens. Dr. Thermax found a video file that showed human children playing. At first, this seemed normal and peaceful. Young beings playing together was common across most species, but human children played games that would be considered torture for most young beings. They chased each other and tried to knock each other down. They climbed to dangerous heights and jumped off. They played games where the goal was to avoid being caught and eaten by pretend predators. The children seemed to enjoy activities that simulated danger and violence. Their games prepared them for a world where such dangers were real and constant. As the day continued, more council members arrived to examine the files. Dr. Velnari from the Peaceful Assembly floated near the back of the group, her harmonious nature clearly disturbed by what they were discovering. "Perhaps these files are fiction," she suggested hopefully. "Maybe humans created exaggerated stories about their abilities." Dr. Thermax shook her head. "I have been analyzing the biological samples found in this vault. The genetic markers support everything we have read. These creatures really did possess these capabilities." High Commander Zeflon found a file that contained what humans called extreme sports. The activities described were so dangerous that most species would consider them forms of suicide. Humans would throw themselves from aircraft and fall toward the ground at terminal velocity, using only a fabric parachute to slow their descent. They would climb vertical rock faces using only their hands and feet. They would surf on waves of water that were tall enough to crush buildings. They did these things for fun. Look at this activity they call mountaineering, Cephalon said. They climb mountains that are so high the air becomes too thin to breathe. Many die attempting it, but others keep trying anyway. The file included statistics showing that thousands of humans died each year, participating in dangerous recreational activities. But instead of banning these activities, human society celebrated those who participated in them. Dr. Thermack discovered the most disturbing file yet. It was written by someone named Yoon Choi, who described herself as a combat medic. Her job was to provide medical care to humans who had been injured in warfare. The medical procedures described in the file were horrifying. Humans who had lost limbs continued fighting. Those with severe internal injuries kept working to help their wounded companions. High Commander Cephalon arrived at the vault before dawn. The human biological files had disturbed his sleep, filling his dreams with images of creatures that could not be killed. As a military leader, he understood that biology was only part of the story. The real measure of any species was how they fought. He activated the archive systems and began searching for military files. The first document he found was titled Tactical Manual for Urban Warfare Operations. The author was listed as Colonel Donghyun Park, Human Defense Force, 23rd Infantry Division. Cephalon began reading, expecting to find standard military doctrine. Instead, he discovered something that challenged everything he knew about warfare. Human military thinking was based on a concept they called total war. This meant using every possible resource and strategy to defeat an enemy, regardless of cost or consequence. Most galactic civilizations fought limited wars with specific objectives. Humans fought as if the survival of their entire species depended on each battle. The manual described urban combat scenarios that would be considered war crimes by galactic standards. Humans fought in cities where civilians lived, using buildings and infrastructure as weapons. They turned every street corner into an ambush point, every building into a fortress. But what disturbed Cephalon most was their attitude toward casualties. Human military doctrine assumed that soldiers would die in large numbers. Instead of avoiding death, they planned for it and used it as a tactical advantage. Dr. Thermack entered the vault as Cephalon was reading about something humans called acceptable losses. "What have you discovered?" she asked. "They fight differently than any species I have studied," Cephalon replied. "Look at this section on unit motivation." He opened a file written by someone named Yoon Kim, who worked as a psychological operations specialist. Her job was to maintain human fighting spirit during extended conflicts. The file described how humans could continue fighting even after suffering massive casualties. When other species would surrender or retreat, humans became more determined. They had psychological mechanisms that turned grief and anger into fighting strength. "They call it fighting for the fallen," Cephalon read aloud. "When their companions die, humans do not become demoralized. They become more dangerous." Dr. Thermack pulled up a related file on her terminal. "This explains their neurochemistry during combat situations. Humans produce natural chemicals that suppress pain and fear, while increasing strength and speed. They call it an adrenaline rush. The biological data showed that humans in combat situations could perform physical feats beyond their normal capabilities. They could lift objects twice their body weight, run faster than their usual maximum speed, and ignore injuries that should have disabled them." Ambassador Krillnex floated into the vault looking exhausted. "I have been reviewing their historical military campaigns all night," he said weakly. "I think I am beginning to understand why our ancestors were afraid." He activated another terminal and brought up a historical file. This describes a battle they called the Siege of Stalingrad. Human forces defended a single city for over 200 days while surrounded by enemies. The tactical data showed an impossible situation. The defending humans were outnumbered, outgunned, and cut off from supplies. Military logic suggested they should have surrendered immediately. Instead, they fought building by building, room by room, until the attacking forces gave up and retreated. The humans held the city, even though 90% of it was destroyed, and most of the defenders died. "They have a saying," Krillnex read from the cultural notes, "victory or death." High Commander Zephlon found another disturbing file. Look at this document about human special forces operations. The file described elite human warriors who operated behind enemy lines with minimal support. These soldiers would infiltrate enemy territory and survive for months using only what they could carry or steal from their enemies. The training for these special forces was so harsh that most galactic species would consider it torture. Humans volunteers would submit to physical punishment, sleep deprivation, starvation, and psychological pressure to prove they could endure any hardship. But the most shocking part was that humans competed for the right to undergo this training. They considered it an honor to suffer for their military units. Dr. Velnari from the Peaceful Assembly entered the vault as the others were discussing special forces training. "I have found something that troubles me greatly," she said, her harmonious voice trembling. She activated a terminal and opened a file titled Guerrilla Warfare Manual. The author was listed as Major Kyung-Ho Lee, Human Resistance Forces Northern Campaign. "This document describes how humans fight when they are conquered," Dr. Velnari explained. "Most species accept defeat and negotiate terms of surrender. Humans continue fighting as individuals even after their governments fall." The Guerrilla Warfare Manual explained how small groups of humans could terrorize much larger occupying forces. They used improvised weapons, hidden supply caches, and civilian support networks to continue their resistance indefinitely. The file included case studies of human populations that had fought occupation forces for decades. Even when the occupiers controlled all major cities and infrastructure, humans in rural areas continued attacking supply lines and communication networks. "They never truly surrender," Dr. Velnari said quietly. "Even when their organized military is destroyed, individual humans continue fighting until they die." High Commander Zephlon discovered a section about human naval warfare that defied military logic. Humans fought battles on their planet's oceans using ships made of metal that somehow floated on water. But human naval tactics were as aggressive as their land combat doctrine. They would ram enemy ships with their own vessels, knowing both ships would probably sink. They developed weapons that could destroy targets from beyond visual range, then sail directly into enemy formations to finish the battle at close range. The file included accounts of human naval battles where both sides suffered total losses. Every ship was destroyed, most crews died, but humans celebrated these outcomes if they achieved their tactical objectives. "They have a term called Pyrrhic victory," Zephlon explained to the group. "It means winning a battle even when the cost exceeds any reasonable benefit." Dr. Thermack found a file that made her tentacles curl in distress. This document describes human siege warfare tactics. The siege manual explained how humans could capture fortified positions that should have been impregnable. Instead of using overwhelming force or advanced technology, they used psychological warfare and extreme patience. Humans would surround enemy fortifications and wait. They would cut off food supplies, fresh water, and communication. Then they would use psychological pressure to break enemy morale. But humans could endure siege conditions longer than most species could survive them. They ate foods that other species could not digest. They recycled water through systems that would seem disgusting to most civilizations. They maintained fighting effectiveness in conditions that would incapacitate other species. Ambassador Krillnex discovered the most disturbing military file yet. This describes something they call last stand tactics. The tactical manual explained how small groups of humans could hold defensive positions against impossible odds. The strategy was simple. Humans would fight to the death, taking as many enemies with them as possible. These last stand battles were not desperate moves by cornered soldiers. They were deliberate tactical decisions designed to inflict maximum casualties on enemy forces and buy time for human reinforcements to arrive. The file included historical examples where a few hundred humans had held defensive positions against thousands of enemies for days or weeks. The human defenders knew they would die, but they chose to die fighting rather than retreat or surrender. "Look at this battle they call Thermopylae," Krillnex said, his peaceful nature clearly disturbed. 300 humans held a mountain pass against an army of over 100,000 enemies. The tactical data showed that the humans knew the position was hopeless. They were vastly outnumbered and had no hope of victory. But they fought anyway, killing thousands of enemies before they were finally overwhelmed. Dr. Velnari found a cultural file that explained human attitudes toward death in combat. They have a concept called dying with honor, she said. Humans believe that how they die is more important than whether they die. The cultural data showed that humans celebrated warriors who died fighting against impossible odds. These dead soldiers became heroes in human society, and their stories inspired future generations to similar acts of sacrifice. This was completely alien to most galactic civilizations. Most species valued survival above all else, and considered unnecessary death to be wasteful and tragic. High Commander Zeflon discovered a file about human military logistics that challenged his understanding of warfare. The file was written by someone named Mi-Kyung Choi, who worked as a supply chain coordinator. Human military forces could operate in environments where no other species could survive. They carried minimal supplies and lived off resources they found or took from enemy forces. They could march for days without adequate food or water, then fight major battles when they reached their destination. Dr. Velnari arrived at the vault with a medical support team. After reading about human warfare capabilities, she had suffered what her species called harmony disruption. Her peaceful nature could not process the idea of beings who lived for conflict. But she was also the Council's leading expert on planetary ecosystems. If they were going to understand humans, someone needed to examine their homeworld. The task fell to her despite her fragile emotional state. She activated the archive systems and began searching for environmental data. The first file she opened was titled Complete Geological Survey of Earth, Third Planet, Sol System. The author was listed as Dr. Mi-Kyung Park, Human Planetary Sciences Division. What she found made her harmony crystals dim with horror. Earth was classified as a Class 12 Death World, the highest danger rating in galactic survey standards. But the more she read, the more she realized that this rating was inadequate. Earth was worse than any death world she had studied. The planet experienced regular mass extinction events that wiped out most life forms every few million years. Asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions, ice ages, and magnetic pole reversals occurred with terrifying frequency. Any one of these events would sterilize most habitable worlds. But life on Earth did not just survive these catastrophes. It came back stronger and more diverse than before. High Commander Zeflon entered the vault as Dr. Velnari was reviewing climate data. "What have you discovered about their homeworld?" he asked. "It is a nightmare," she replied weakly. "Look at this temperature data." She displayed Earth's climate information on the main screen. The planet's temperature ranged from -80 degrees in polar regions to +70 degrees in equatorial deserts. These extremes would kill most galactic species within minutes. But humans lived in all of these temperature zones. They built cities in frozen wastelands where the ground was permanently frozen. They established settlements in deserts where the daytime heat could melt metal. They lived on mountains where the air was too thin to breathe. "How is that possible?" Zeflon asked. Dr. Velnari opened another file. "This document explains their adaptation methods. Instead of changing their environment to suit their biology, they changed their biology to suit their environment." The file was written by someone named Seung-Ho Kim, a human evolutionary biologist. His research showed how humans had adapted to different environments across their planet. Humans in cold regions developed more body fat and increased blood circulation to prevent freezing. Those in hot regions developed better sweating systems and darker skin to protect against radiation. High-altitude humans grew larger lungs and more efficient oxygen-carrying blood cells. But the most disturbing discovery was that these adaptations happened quickly. Within a few generations, human populations could develop biological changes that would take most species thousands of years to achieve. Dr. Thermak entered the vault as Dr. Velnari was examining human population distribution maps. "I have been analyzing their biological samples," she reported. "Their genetic diversity is extraordinary." She displayed her findings on another terminal. Human DNA contained genetic markers from multiple evolutionary paths that should have been mutually exclusive. They had traits of predators and prey species, hunters and gatherers, land and sea creatures. It appears that humans are the result of multiple evolutionary pressures acting simultaneously, Dr. Thermack explained. Their planet forced them to develop capabilities that should not exist in the same organism. Dr. Velnari found a file that made her crystals flicker with distress. This describes the other life forms that shared their planet. The biological survey listed creatures that sounded like mythical monsters. Great white sharks that could grow to 8 meters in length and bite with enough force to crush small spacecraft. Saltwater crocodiles that could remain motionless for hours before attacking with lightning speed. Polar bears that could survive in temperatures that would freeze most galactic species solid. But these were just the large predators. Earth also contained millions of smaller creatures that were equally dangerous. Venomous spiders whose bite could kill in minutes. Toxic snakes that could strike faster than most beings could react. Diseases carried by tiny insects that could wipe out entire populations. And humans shared their world with all of these creatures? Zeflon asked in disbelief. Not just shared, Dr. Velnari replied. According to this file, they domesticated some of them. She opened a document about human-animal husbandry written by Eugene Lee, a human agricultural specialist. The file showed that humans had turned some of Earth's most dangerous creatures into helpers and food sources. Humans domesticated wolves, pack-hunting predators with powerful jaws and aggressive territorial behavior. They called these domesticated wolves dogs and kept them as companions and workers. Some human families shared their living spaces with these predators. They also domesticated large herbivores like cattle and horses. These animals were massive enough to crush humans accidentally, but humans rode them for transportation and raised them for food. But the most shocking discovery was that humans domesticated these animals not by making them less dangerous, but by learning to work with their dangerous instincts. Ambassador Krillnex floated into the vault looking physically ill. I have been reviewing their recreational activities, he said weakly. They deliberately sought out danger for entertainment. He activated another terminal and displayed a file about human extreme sports. The activities described seemed designed to simulate the life-threatening conditions that their planet provided naturally. Humans would throw themselves from cliffs attached to elastic cords, trusting their lives to simple mechanical devices. They surfed on ocean waves that were large enough to destroy buildings. They climbed vertical rock faces using only their hands and small metal tools. Some humans practiced free diving, where they would swim to depths that should crush their bodies while holding their breath for impossible lengths of time. Others engaged in base jumping, where they would leap from tall structures and use fabric wings to slow their descent. They missed their dangerous world when they were in safe environments, Krillnex explained, so they created artificial dangers to replace the natural ones. Dr. Velnari found a geological file that explained Earth's tectonic activity. The planet's surface was divided into moving plates that constantly crashed into each other. This created earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and mountain formation that made large areas uninhabitable for periods of time. But humans built their cities directly on top of these dangerous geological formations. They lived next to active volcanoes on earthquake fault lines and in areas prone to landslides and tsunamis. The file included disaster response protocols that showed humans had developed sophisticated methods for surviving natural catastrophes. Instead of avoiding dangerous areas, they learned to predict disasters and prepare for them. Look at this section on volcanic activity, Dr. Velnari said, her voice trembling. They built cities next to mountains that regularly exploded with molten rock and toxic gases. High Commander Zeflon examined the volcanic data with growing amazement. According to this, humans actually used volcanic activity as an energy source. They built power plants that converted geothermal energy into electricity. Dr. Thermack discovered a file about Earth's ocean systems that challenged everything she knew about aquatic environments. Earth's oceans covered most of the planet's surface and contained some of the most dangerous predators in their ecosystem. The ocean file was written by Na-Young Kim, a human marine biologist. Her research documented creatures that lived in Earth's seas, and the descriptions read like horror stories. Giant squids with tentacles longer than most spacecraft could reach depths where the pressure would crush most galactic species. Schools, a fish that could strip flesh from bones in seconds. Jellyfish whose stings could kill humans in minutes. But humans did not avoid these dangerous waters. They built boats and ships to travel across oceans. They dove beneath the surface to hunt and explore. Some humans spent their entire lives working on the water. They developed technologies to survive in environments that should have been completely hostile to their biology, Dr. Thermack reported. Their engineering capabilities were driven by the need to survive on an actively dangerous world. Dr. Velnari found a climatology file that showed Earth's weather patterns were as dangerous as its geology and biology. The planet experienced regular storms that would be considered natural disasters on most civilized worlds. Hurricanes with winds strong enough to destroy buildings occurred seasonally in some regions. Tornadoes could appear suddenly and level entire settlements. Lightning strikes killed thousands of humans each year. But instead of hiding from these weather patterns, humans learned to predict and work around them. They built structures designed to withstand hurricane-force winds. They developed warning systems for tornadoes and lightning strikes. Some humans even studied these dangerous weather phenomena professionally. Storm chasers would deliberately drive vehicles into the paths of tornadoes to collect scientific data. Ambassador Krillnex discovered a file that made his peaceful nature retreat in horror. This document describes Earth's seasonal changes. High Commander Zeflon called an emergency session of the full Galactic Council. Representatives from 47 member civilizations gathered at Nexus Prime within 12 hours. The speed of their response showed how seriously they took the human discovery. Zeflon stood before the assembled delegates in the Great Council chamber. Behind him, holographic displays showed images from the human archives. The faces in the chamber reflected fear, confusion, and disbelief. Fellow Council members, Zeflon began, we have spent 4 days examining the sealed archives. What we have discovered challenges everything we know about galactic civilization. He activated the first display, showing biological data about human capabilities. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the chamber as the numbers appeared on screen. The species we thought was extinct possesses physical abilities that exceed our most advanced military units. They survived on a death world that would kill most of our citizens within hours. They developed military doctrine based on never surrendering, even when facing certain death. Ambassador Krillnex floated to the speaker's platform. His normally peaceful demeanor had been replaced by barely controlled panic. But the most terrifying discovery is in the final archive section. We have evidence that humans are still alive. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Several representatives demanded immediate verification. Others suggested that the archives were somehow fabricated. Dr. Velnari activated another display, showing star charts and colony ship manifests. The destruction of the Sol system was not an extinction event. It was humanity's first successful faster-than-light experiment. They did not die in a stellar disaster. They left their dying system and spread across the galaxy. She highlighted dozens of star systems on the galactic map. According to the archive data, human colony ships were dispatched to all of these locations. If even half of these missions succeeded, there could be millions of humans living on worlds we consider uninhabitable. Dr. Thermack presented the most disturbing evidence. Our deep space monitoring stations have been receiving signals from these systems for centuries. We classified them as natural phenomena or equipment malfunctions. But when I analyze the patterns against human communication protocols, they match exactly. The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. Humans had been transmitting across the galaxy for thousands of years. The Council had been receiving their signals but had not recognized them as artificial communications. High Commander Zeflon activated the final display, showing recent deep space survey data. 3 days ago, our monitoring stations detected energy patterns consistent with human technology. The signals are coming from multiple star systems across a quarter of the galaxy. The energy signatures showed technological development far beyond what the archive suggested. If humans had continued advancing their technology for 3,000 years, they might now possess capabilities that exceeded anything in known space. We estimate that human civilization now spans over 200 star systems. Zeflon continued. They have been building colonies, fleets, and industrial bases while we thought they were extinct. Ambassador Srelnox of the Hegemony Defense Fleet stood to address the chamber. If these creatures possess the capabilities described in the ED archives, and if they have had 3,000 years to develop advanced technology, they represent a threat unlike anything we have ever faced. Several military representatives began discussing immediate defense preparations. Plans were made to reinforce border systems and alert rapid response fleets. But Dr. Velnari interrupted their planning with a trembling voice. There is something else. The signals we have been detecting suggest that humans know about us. She displayed communication intercepts that had been collected over recent years. The signal patterns showed that human monitoring systems were tracking galactic civilization activity. They had been watching council movements, trade routes, and military exercises. They have been studying us while we thought they were dead, she explained. They know our capabilities, our weaknesses, and our locations. The chamber erupted again as representatives realized they were facing an enemy who had been preparing for contact, while the council remained ignorant of their existence. But the discussion was interrupted by an urgent alert from the Nexus Prime Communication Center. A message had been received on standard galactic frequencies. The origin point was unknown, but the signal was directed specifically at the council chamber. Security Chief Vexcrawl activated the communication system with extreme caution. A holographic display appeared above the speaker's platform, showing the image of a creature that matched the human archive descriptions. The being appeared to be male with dark hair and eyes. He wore simple clothing that looked comfortable rather than military or formal. Behind him, other humans could be seen working at what appeared to be a spacecraft control room. Greetings, Galactic Council, the human said in perfectly translated galactic standard. My name is Hyunwoo Kim, captain of the salvage vessel Morning Star. I represent the human colonial fleet operating in this sector. The chamber fell completely silent. They were looking at a living human, speaking directly to them across interstellar space. Hyunwoo continued speaking in a calm, friendly voice. We have been monitoring energy signatures from Nexus Prime for the past several days. Our automated systems detected someone accessing old Earth archive files. We wanted to make sure you found everything you were looking for. High Commander Zeflon found his voice first. You knew we were examining your archives? Of course, Hyunwoo replied. We left those archives for whoever found them. We figured that eventually, some civilization would discover our old home system and want to know what happened to us. The simple casualness of his response was somehow more terrifying than any threat would have been. Humans had anticipated this moment and prepared for it. We did not know your species still existed, Dr. Thermac managed to say. Our records showed that your home system was destroyed. Hyunwoo smiled, an expression that showed his teeth in what appeared to be a friendly gesture. Earth Star was getting unstable, so we had to leave. We moved most of our population to colony worlds before the system became uninhabitable. It was sad to lose our home, but we had already found new places to live. Another human appeared, beside Hyunwoo on the display. This one appeared to be female, with long dark hair and wearing what looked like a ship officer's uniform. I'm So-Min Park, navigation specialist, she introduced herself. We've actually been aware of galactic civilization for quite some time. Your trade routes pass through several systems where we have established colonies. Ambassador Krillnex floated forward shakily. You have been watching us? Not watching exactly, So-Min replied. More like being polite neighbors. We figured that if you wanted to make contact, you would send an official diplomatic mission. We did not want to intrude on your space without invitation. The concept was so alien to galactic thinking that several council members had difficulty processing it. Humans had the capability to contact galactic civilization, but had chosen to wait for proper protocols. High Commander Zeflon gathered his courage to ask the question that terrified him most. How many of you are there? A third human joined the conversation, this one wearing what appeared to be engineering coveralls. I'm Jae-Ho Lee, Chief Engineer. Current human population across all colony worlds is approximately 47 billion individuals. We've established settlements in about 230 star systems. The numbers were staggering. Human population had grown from the few million survivors who escaped Earth to a civilization larger than most galactic empires. We tend to prefer worlds that other species find challenging, Jeho continued. High gravity, extreme climates, active geology, the kinds of places that remind us of home. Dr. Velnari asked the question that had been terrifying her since the archives were opened. Are your people still as militarily capable as your historical records suggest? Hyunwoo exchanged glances with his companions. Well, we've had some time to improve our technology and tactics, but mostly we've been focused on exploration and terraforming. There are so many interesting worlds out here that nobody else was using. The casual way he mentioned improving their military capabilities sent chills through the chamber. If humans had been developing weapons and strategies for 3,000 years, they might now possess technology beyond galactic comprehension. We should probably arrange a formal first contact meeting, Somin suggested. We have diplomatic protocols for this kind of situation. Would you prefer to meet at a neutral location, or would you like to visit one of our worlds? The offer to visit a human world caused several council members to retreat in terror. The idea of setting foot on a planet inhabited by billions of these creatures was too frightening to consider. Ambassador Krillnex managed to respond. A neutral meeting location would be appropriate. Perfect, Hyunwoo replied. We have a diplomatic vessel in your area. Ambassador Na-young Choi is aboard with a full first contact team. They can be at Nexus Prime within 6 standard hours. The fact that humans already had diplomatic ships positioned near Council space suggested a level of preparation that was both impressive and terrifying.